I want Bitcoiners mostly to read this book. Like if non-Bitcoiners read it, that's fine. But mostly I want Bitcoiners to read it because I want them to really understand the depths of the fiat depravity that we're experiencing in this world. I will say one thing, Knut. I think fiat money is an atheist money.
That whole debate, are we really going down that part of the rabbit hole?
Welcome back to the Freedom Footprint Show, the Bitcoin philosophy show with Knut Svanholm and me, Luke the Pseudofin. Today, we're joined by Jimmy Song, developer, educator, and author of 4 Bitcoin books, including his newest title, Fiat Ruins Everything. In this episode, Jimmy walks us through his reflections on the Bitcoin adoption he's witnessed in his travels. We talk about his book, Fiat Ruins Everything, and we question the nature of AI, agency, and propaganda. But then, we dive deep into religion with a debate on atheism, morality, Christianity, and the effects of fiat money on these views. We hope you'll find this episode thought-provoking. But before we jump in, a quick reminder that the best way to support the show is to send us a boost or stream us some sats using a value-for-value podcasting app such as Fountain. If you're listening to the show as a podcast, check it out on Fountain. You can earn sats from listening and you can support us and all your other favorite shows. You can also support us on Geyser Fund or send sats directly to our Lightning address, freedom@geyser.fund. And if you want to exchange your dirty fiat, you can support us on Patreon. All our links are in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the episode and subscribe to the channel. Even if you're listening as a podcast, head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe to us there. It would be a big help. And finally, we want to thank today's sponsors: Amber App, Wasabi Wallet, Orange Pill App, The Bitcoin Way, and Geyser. All their information is in the description. We'll be talking a bit more about them later. And now, without further ado, here is Jimmy Song on the Freedom Footprint Show. Jimmy, welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be on the show.
Yeah, lovely to have you here, Jimmy. It's been a while. We saw you in Riga last, I believe. And from what I know, after that, you've been sort of traveling the world with your family, your great big family, and seeing how fiat ruins everything everywhere, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I guess it's been over a year since I've seen you, but yeah, that last year's Baltic Honey Badger was when we started the trip. We finished the trip in June, and another Baltic Honey Badger has happened since then. So yeah, it's kind of crazy how time flies.
Yeah. So what countries have you visited? Is there a list? Like, is that list too long?
There's we visited 200. We were traveling for 277 days, and we visited 34 countries. So I can name them all for you. It's not too bad. It's Latvia, Austria, Italy, Vatican, Switzerland, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, Peru, Colombia, Spain, Morocco, Palestine, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Turkey, Georgia, Armenia, UAE, India, Singapore, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, Fiji, New Zealand. Yeah, so I think I named all of them.
Wow, what a list. And like the obvious question is, to which the answer is probably the title of your book, but what is your main takeaway from like visiting all these countries? What is the conclusion?
Well, the main reason for the trip is because I like traveling, and I've always wanted to travel with my family and so on. The main takeaway would be that it's good to spend lots of time with family and go do adventures like this. Unfortunately, fiat money makes that very difficult because everyone is up to their eyeballs in debt, and debt service becomes sort of the restricting thing for most people. You have a mortgage or a car loan or a student loan, or you have a job that you need to be at to pay off all of that stuff, so you can't leave. And that's the real tragedy for me, is that more people don't get to do this because they're trapped by fiat money.
We're all in or we're not, but all the fiat people are in a hamster's wheel. And that's like, for me, that's a lot what Bitcoin is all about. It's about escaping that hamster's wheel. And so to Bitcoin adoption in the different countries, like where are the communities? Like where are we in the world? Like was there places that surprised you that the adoption was, more widespread in certain places than others?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little hard to answer that question because I went to a lot of these countries and met with Bitcoiners. So of course, like they're already like adopting Bitcoin or whatever. It's a little harder to tell with the normie person. But from what I hear, the places where you do have inflation problems, they tend to be the places where people are the most interested. So Lebanon and Argentina are probably the two most hyperinflating places that I was at. But Egypt and Turkey are sort of in that process as well, and they seem to have a lot of people that were interested. And adoption is a little bit of a tricky term because the way most people use it is, are people transacting in it? What can you buy with Bitcoin or something like that? Really, adoption is more people storing their value in it, and certainly there's a decent number of those people, especially in the Bitcoin community. What I will say though is that there are Bitcoin communities almost everywhere. Like I was in Tbilisi, Georgia. I did not expect there to be that many Bitcoiners, but there were, and in fact, that's like one of the big hotbeds of Bitcoin activity, largely because there's a lot of people coming out of Russia. This is one of the places that they've been going. They're escaping Russia. And if they need to send money back and forth, the normal international rails for money transfer are not available. So they're using Bitcoin. So, you see like random stores with the Bitcoin sign and stuff. So you can go in like, send Bitcoin back to relatives back home, I guess, if you're Russian. And there's a lot of that all over the world, and it's not something that you would think of, but there's just kind of activity all over the place.
And you've been traveling a lot before as well, like for years now. Maybe not with your entire family, but what's the difference now in 2023 to say like 5 years back in terms of like? Do people make the distinction between Bitcoin and crypto to a larger extent now, or?
Yeah, I would say that's the case. There's certainly a lot more separation. And the main thing that I've noticed is that pretty much every city that you go to, they used to have a single meetup, and then there were a bunch of shitcoiners and they went off and split to do their own meetup, or they kept that meetup and the Bitcoiners actually created their own meetup or something like that. But there's usually a distinct set. There's some Bitcoiners and then there's crypto people. The crypto people are almost always thinking about like the next ICO or something. Hey, here's a new DeFi product, or here's a cool monkey JPEG or something. They're not thinking at all about sound money or, the life change that comes from having a good store of value. They're thinking about, how to get rich really quickly and, CZ coming to town and stuff like that. It's very shallow. It's very much based on sort of almost like celebrity news or something like that. The Bitcoiners, they get it. And there's a lot more of those communities than say 5 years ago. And it's very encouraging to me, especially in places like Asia where, you had this giant bubble of and all sorts of scams that were happening over there. And it got like seriously overheated on that front. But there's like sort of a phoenix rising from the ashes kind of thing, where there's a core of Bitcoiners that are holding on, and they're showing sort of the big difference between the two. So there is some daylight between those things, and thankfully that seems to be sort of the evolution of this space, is that you get people, you get a lot of people interested, and it's sort of amorphous, but then there's sort of a separating of the Bitcoiners from crypto, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, but who said that? Crypto is peak fiat. I like that. So when did you decide to write the book?
I started writing the book last year. I guess after taking David Perel's Rite of Passage course, and I felt like I could write anything at any length, and I started writing columns for Bitcoin Magazine based on that. I took some of those articles and put it into this book. But yeah, large part of it was written during the trip, written with a lot of conversations with Bitcoiners, just talking about, like how things are in different parts of the world and stuff like that. And yeah, it was really just sort of like something I was doing during the trip. And I wanted to publish this book anyway, and it turned out that talking to Bitcoiners all over the world was a great way to like distill and sharpen a lot of the thoughts that I had. But yeah, it's a fairly long book. It's, I think, the longest of the books that I've written, and that includes Programming Bitcoin. So 340 pages, 90,000 words, 6 parts, 30 something chapters. So yeah, it's a fairly deep work, and it's been fun writing it.
I bet it's more accessible than programming Bitcoin, though, to most people.
Certainly hope so. And that was sort of the goal with a lot of these books, was to bring other people in. So part of that is making it short so that people can get into it really easily. So Little Bitcoin book, Thank God for Bitcoin, Bitcoin and the American Dream. They're all meant to be very quick reads so that you can get into it and get an idea, and just break down whatever barriers you might have, or in getting intimidated or something like that. This one, though, is different in that it's aimed at Bitcoiners. So I want Bitcoiners mostly to read this book. Like if non-Bitcoiners read it, that's fine. But mostly I want Bitcoiners to read it because I want them to really understand the depths of the fiat depravity that we're experiencing in this world. So, I write a lot about the individual incentives, the company incentives, national incentives, the global dollar hegemony that we're under, the morality of fiat money and how it's really truly evil, and finally how we're beset on two sides because altcoiners are taking Bitcoin's good name and using it to pump their bags, while fiat people are trying to produce CBDCs and get sort of like a surveillance state of full control. So, yeah, that's basically how the book's organized, and hopefully it's something that a lot of Bitcoiners can use to really be convicted in their holding, I guess.
Yeah, and what's your writing process like? I mean, what is writing to you? Is it therapeutic? Like, I know you have around 700 kids, and I guess writing is a way to zone out and get away from those responsibilities for a while. Like, when during the day do you find time for writing?
Yeah, it used to be a lot harder than it is now, and I really do credit David Perel for helping me sort of unlock a lot of that. Because I took his course I think it was April of last year, and it was
Rite of Passage. What's that?
Yeah, Rite of Passage, WRITE of Passage. So it's a pun. And he has a cohort starting. If you're interested and you're in writing and want to write things easier, he has some really, really great material. So I took that course and I made it like super hard on myself. So it's like a 5 or 6 week course, and you're supposed to produce maybe like 4 articles, right? Like produce 4 pieces in those like 5 or 6 weeks. I decided to produce an article every day. So I made it that much harder. I was like, this course costs a lot of money. I'm going to squeeze every last drop of value from it. And I did that, and it was a wonderful experience because I learned to just sort of organize my ideas. And, part of the thing that I learned is that, you don't write from a blank page. And too many writers get into that mode where they just like face a blank page. They go to the blank page and go, all right, what am I going to write about? And then they try to come up with ideas, and and you get into like writer's block and all sorts of other things. And David's whole thing is you should be collecting ideas all the time. In everything that you read, you should be taking notes. You should be, adding sort of like ideas that you have to yourself and collecting them somewhere. And when you have a lot of these things, and they're somewhat organized, then you don't have to start from a blank page. You take your ideas and you try to express them in a coherent manner. And you take that, and then now you have some raw material, and it's a lot easier to write. I also learned to sort of like unblock myself almost, and sort of just get the ideas out or explanations out. And one of the methods in which you can do that is get something like otter.ai for your phone, and just explain what you're going to write about as if to a friend, right? Just, okay, what are you writing an essay about? Well, I'm writing about this and blah, 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 and just explain it in plain words as if you're talking to a friend. You could take that and use that as your first draft and refine it. And that actually works pretty well, amazingly enough. There are lots of other stuff that he teaches, and I practiced a lot of them, and I was able to essentially make essays much more quickly than I was before. Essentially, this book is a collection of essays, and I can knock out 500 to 1,000 words without a problem. Just like coming up with like having some ideas already about what I want to write about, and then refining it in a first draft, and then going through second, third draft, and then you're pretty much done at that point. So yeah.
Cool. That reminds me of my writing process for the first book, where I promised myself to write a page a day. That's way less than 5,000 words, though. It's probably more like
500. A page a day is maybe like 250 or so.
Yeah. So it's not very much, but it's still, that was like the first attempt, and that really having some sort of disciplined routine helps for sure. And and to the other, like I started every chapter by asking myself a question, and then the rest of the chapter was answering that question, which I take it it's sort of what you did when explaining what you were going to write about. Like
I mean that's a writing prompt method, and that can be very helpful. And like just sort of like there's usually a step I would take in between if I were to do it that way, of just sort of getting the main ideas out on a piece of paper, the brainstorming stage, where you just sort of write a bunch of ideas on what you want to write about or how you're going to answer the question. The other thing that you mentioned about having some sort of discipline, I was fortunate enough to have Parker as a good friend, and he was writing a book at the same time. So we just like checked in on each other. We kept each other accountable by doing a call every week and just saying, okay, what did you work on last week? What are you going to work on this week? And then talk about it. And what were your blockers? How can we help each other get past these blocks or whatever? And give resources to each other to figure out what could work and so on. So that was really useful too. And for any aspiring writer out there, like go get yourself into like a writers group or something, right? Like having other writers around, even if they're not reading your stuff, just to be able to say, hey, I did what I said I was going to do, makes all the difference, right? Like having somebody there to tell you, hey, like, okay, like we're going to meet about this is sometimes enough of a deadline where you're going to work feverishly the night before to actually have something to say at the writers group that you're going to meet at. Otherwise, like it's just way too easy to be lazy and just ignore things for weeks, months, years sometimes, and that's That's something that you have to really check yourself on if you're a writer.
Yeah, there are no shortcuts in. Well, maybe there are shortcuts like AI. How much AI did you use, and how did you use it?
Yeah, so I use some ChatGPT, and the really nice thing about AI is that it's almost instantaneous. So if you've ever used an editor, you send your stuff to them, and they don't respond for like 2 weeks, and you're just you had all this momentum writing and editing and all that stuff, and then suddenly like you have nothing to do for 2 weeks, because if you change anything, then the editor is like, you're basically forking your own book. But if and during those 2 weeks, you might lose a lot of momentum, get distracted, do other stuff. So it's like hard to get back into it when the editor finally gets it to you. So a large part of what I used ChatGPT for was as an editor. So you can give it a good prompt. You're going to be my book editor, and you're going to correct all grammar. Try to make things that sound confusing sound more clear, and stuff like that. And you can tell it, okay, edit it really, really lightly or edit it completely, right? And you can sort of tweak that based on the prompt that you give it. I generally went very light, just correct a few things. And, if there's any grammar errors or something like that, please correct that. But like, don't change the ideas too much or anything, or, just make things sound clear. And that was really useful because you get instantaneous feedback pretty much. So you can take a paragraph and just be like, okay, edit it and let's read it again. And it works as sort of like a second draft, and then you're going to have to edit again. Whatever the AI does, it's going to mess up in some way, so you're going to need to edit it again. But it's great feedback, and it doesn't stop your momentum. It keeps you going, and you could do it as many times as you want, which is really nice. If you don't like how something is like coming, and then you can start over and try again, and you don't have to kind of get stuck. And more importantly, like, you can ask the AI, like, okay, why did you make these changes? Like, tell me specifically what was the rationale. And you can sort of understand what the motivations are based on the prompts that you're giving it, and you can tweak those too. So it was a very useful tool. I personally think that's probably why we're getting like an explosion of books right now in the Bitcoin space. I think I published, and then like Lynn Alden had a book come out, and Parker obviously has one. Mark Goodwin has one, and there's another guy from Bitcoin Magazine that has another one. And I mean, there's like 5 or 6 books that came out like at the same time. So a lot of people are complaining about the amount of books that they're going to need to read. But, hey, it makes the writing process has gotten more efficient. You're going to see more of it, and that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, that's definitely been an explosion, and I'm happy that we got into the door early on by writing books before this whole thing started.
Okay, we have some big news. We have a new lead sponsor, Amber App. They're the #1 exchange in the Southern Hemisphere. They're rated for the best customer service around, and their global launch is coming. But the reason we're partnering with Amber App is because of the people. If you haven't listened to our episode with Izzy, CEO of Amber App, you really should go check it out. You'll see why it made perfect sense to partner with Izzy and Amber App. That's all I'll say for now. You really have to check it out for yourself. They have loads of great features coming that we're excited to share with you when the time comes. But for now, just check out the episode, check out their website, amber.app. You can see for yourself why we're thrilled to bring Amber App on as our lead sponsor and partner. So go check it out. Next up, Wasabi Wallet, the privacy by default, open source, non-custodial Bitcoin wallet with CoinJoin built in. It's the easy-to-use, comprehensive, affordable way to make your coins private. And the best part is they've been making huge improvements to the app. They're really focusing on the user experience, adding advanced features for power users. They just keep getting better. You send your coins to your Wasabi wallet, and they get combined with loads of other coins using the Wabi Sabi protocol, so they're private on the other end. Your tracks are covered, so you can work on expanding your freedom footprint without worrying about your privacy. So, check out wasabiwallet.io and download Wasabi today.
So speaking of AI, it's a great tool, but like the way I see it, that's what it is. It's a tool. It's a Swiss Army knife, if you will. But the term intelligence is so misleading because I think like to really be an artificial intelligence, and this Skynet type of artificial intelligence that people are scared of, that suddenly has a will of its own, that requires agency and probably requires a sense of felt uneasiness, right? To use a Misesian term, for an entity to engage in actual action, to make a decision on their own. So what's your take there? I'm curious about what you think about AI and if it can ever be truly autonomous. Can it ever be anything than a perfect slave? Can it be its own master at some point?
Yeah, I think you put it pretty well. It doesn't have a will of its own. And this is the part that almost every AI doomer seems to be missing, is that it doesn't have a will. It just does. And like, this is the difference between like something that is living and something that is dead, is that it has a will of its own. It has motivations. It wants to do something. It wants to achieve a goal. And AI does not. It only has a goal as far as you define it for it. And you say, okay, I want you to do this, and then you can do this. But this points out something to me that I think a lot of people miss with respect to genuine innovation, which is that hyped innovation, like fiat innovation, right? Fake science. And there's a whole chapter in my book about fiat science and how more or less socialist it is right now. But there's a lot of hype, for example, about like quantum computing or cold fusion or stuff like that. And you can always tell that these things are not for real and that there's nothing really coming around the corner, because it's always sort of hyped up. It's no one's really like necessarily scared of it. I mean, they might say, oh, it can break this and break that or whatever, but generally it's just people sort of asserting that this might or might not happen, or it's just around the corner, it's 20 years away, something like that. Whereas with AI, there's a lot of fear around it, right? There's a lot of people saying, "Oh, this is going to be Skynet, and these, things are going to take over," or something like that. Almost all innovation, if you look back, has that element. So, for example, when cell phones first came out, everyone was saying, "Hey, you're going to get cancer in your brain because it's too close, and you got all these electromagnetic waves and stuff like that." When the internet first came out, it's going to be like just all porn, and no one's gonna, it's going to degrade our morals and stuff.
And it's just 30% porn, so it's fine.
Yeah. But when the microwave first came out, it was it's going to take all nutritional value out of the food that you put in it. And when electricity first came out, it's going to kill everything and cause more fires and all kinds of stuff like that. When automobiles came out, it's going to be like a debt of prostitution and all this other, like there's always FUD around new tech. And Bitcoin, of course, has had it in spades. But the fact that, we have this FUD around, or this sort of like, a lot of people just sort of scared about AI, tells me that it's a genuine innovation, that it's a genuine tool, that it's something that's actually real. As opposed to something fake like quantum computing or cold fusion or something like that. Because in a sense, like even the people that are deeply into AI, like the open AI people, even they don't really understand how it works, right? And this is something I point out in the science chapter, is that most of the time, the way innovation occurs is not through, study of theory. It's engineers, right? It's people that are doing stuff. And most of the time, the engineers figure something out, and they're like, I don't know why this works, but it works great, and I gotta use it to build stuff. And then the theoreticians come in later, and they explain it by the ideal gas law or something like that. But the engineers find it first, and I suspect that's what's going on with AI is in that they found something that works. They don't really understand how it works. It's using some sort of like neural net and various weighings of like billions of parameters and things like that. And it's based on, like a cat is related to a dog because they're both kind of pets. And, you take this giant corpus of text and find out relationships and the frequency with which they happen. And they make these relationships and somehow it comes out with something that's kind of sensible. And they don't really understand how that works at all. Like the actual like algorithms, yeah, we understand, but the way it comes up with the actual output, we don't really understand, right? But it's there, and it's it's kind of, because we don't understand it, a lot of people are kind of scared of it and think that it's going to destroy the world somehow. But that's how it's a genuine innovation. It's engineers that produce something, and it's not fiat academics that are doing mental masturbation or something, right? Like it's a much better sort of system, and this is how innovation occurred in the past, not centralized, top down, we're going to make this happen kind of thing, but bottom up, decentralized, just people trying stuff, and then, oh wow, that worked. Okay, let's see why it works.
Yeah. So could the fears around it and the people confusing real stupidity for artificial intelligence, because those who can't tell this, who don't understand agency, and that you have to have a desire and end to use means to reach that end and stuff. People who don't understand Austrian economics, basically, is it because they're NPCs themselves and lack will? Like, is that why they're scared? Because that's where the confusion lies, because they're not very good at thinking and doing stuff.
Possibly. I suspect that what fiat money has done is taken or reduced people's desire for agency, right? Or they get scared of agency because now they're responsible for their own choices. And basically you get 12 years of government schooling at least, where you're told that, there are experts and those are the people that you should listen to. And there's all this sort of like almost moral language around, listening to your superiors or something like that, which has, I think, as you've alluded to, reduced their agency in many ways. They don't necessarily want things. They certainly don't want things that are deep and meaningful. If they want anything at all, it's very shallow and immediate and high time preference. So those are generally the incentives of fiat money, is that it does produce very high time preference and living for now. And part of the NPC mindset is, not figuring out eternal truths, but, what will get me out of trouble right now and make sure that I don't get in trouble right now, instead of like sort of standing your ground and saying, I think this is right. And certainly for those of us that were against lockdowns and vaccines and stuff like that from 3 years ago, standing your ground actually turns out to have been the correct choice. But, for the NPC, it's whatever Fauci was saying that week, you kind of had to spout. And sadly, it changed every week. So they were intellectually completely inconsistent, but that didn't really matter because they're high time preference anyway. And intellectual consistency is a long-term virtue. So they just kept doubling down on it. Well, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and masks don't work, but no, masks do work. No, you need multiple masks, and you need to, masks work, except and like you need to wear a mask all the time, unless you're protesting Black Lives Matter. Like it just became like more and more twisted. And that's sort of the direction that that fiat money pushes you into. And I suspect what you're saying is correct in that it makes us a little less human, because our agency, our will, our desires, and being able to act on those things is what makes us human. It's very different than what a plant, what a rock can do. But even amongst living things, we have way more agency. We have more ability to do different things, to act on the desires that we have. And sadly, fiat money, I guess, in a way, makes us less human.
Yeah, beautifully put. I've heard a lot of psychologists, specifically a Belgian one called Matthias Desmets, I think, talk about like mass formation. He doesn't use the word mass psychosis, but he's alluding to it, I think. In this, that what you were talking about, the rules that changed every day when Fauci said this or Fauci said that, this psychologist's point is that it becomes a virtue signaling mechanism for the NPC to be good at adapting to the new rules, no matter how absurd they are. And the more absurd they get and the more they change, the stronger this urge to follow the flock and be like ahead of the curve that you're supposed to flatten. That becomes a thing in itself. And I think this is very common in humans to have this mass delusion thing going on. So is fiat that? Like, is fiat a great big mass psychosis thing, for lack of a better word?
Well, so I would frame it maybe slightly differently, and I have a whole chapter on this, on how fiat makes everything political. So what fiat money does, because of the existence of the money printer, it means that more or less that it makes all issues political. So I don't have healthcare. Healthcare is now a political issue because you have a money printer. And therefore, the money printer can essentially print money to solve my problem. So, alluding back to this whole agency thing, whenever you have a problem and you're a normal human being in a sound money world, you try to go solve it yourself because you are responsible for yourself. And if you have a problem, you try to go solve it. But under fiat money, it becomes way more collectivist because you have the presence of a money printer. If I am sick now, and you have the ability to print money as a government, then you not printing money for my benefit is now like a moral dilemma, right? Like you kind of have to do it because it's kind of like the Superman dilemma. If you're Superman, you should be constantly doing stuff because you have the ability and you can save lives all the time, right? Just there's always somebody in trouble somewhere, and you should be. And that's sort of the dilemma that every central bank is in, every government is in, because they have the ability to print money, and they claim that it's more or less free, right? Like whenever they do bailouts or whatever, it's not coming from taxpayers. No, they're printing money on your behalf. So any problem that anyone has now becomes a public thing, and that means that. The more you can claim a problem, the more money is going to get thrown towards you. And this is part of the sort of victimhood mentality or victimhood Olympics that's been going on pretty much everywhere, is that you want to claim some victimhood status so you get more money because you've been injured in some way, you have some problem, and the government now has to print money on your behalf. So all that is to say that there's politics now injected into everything, because any problem anyone has now, it becomes a purview of the money printer, of the government. Now, they don't necessarily solve it, but more or less they have to spend money on it to at least appear like they're not complete jerks. So when you have this political thing, you now have this desire to get stuff, right, to claim victimhood status, but you're not going to get it until a majority agrees with you. And the mechanism by which you get a majority to agree with you is propaganda. And this is sort of like hacking into the psychology of people. And there's a whole set of literature on like exactly how it works and what techniques you can use and so on. But this has become the chosen weapon of sort of getting manufactured consent, if you will. And it's a technique that's been more or less weaponized, and it's become a lot easier to implement, largely because of 12 years of government schooling where you're not really practicing a lot of agency and so on. So you get a population that is very docile, and you get propaganda that is very good at not necessarily evoking emotion, but like getting a certain type of behavior. There's a book by Jacques Ellul that's very good on this, and it goes into the purpose of propaganda and how it works. The purpose of propaganda isn't necessarily to get you to believe something. It is to get you to do something. And this is a very key distinction, because a lot of people think, okay, well, like they're obviously lying and so on. Most of good propaganda is almost always true. The way that you use propaganda is to say true things, just omit omit other things that are also true to make it seem like a particular way and ultimately get you to act. So, for example, during the pandemic, we had the mask mandates. Everyone had to wear a mask. Now, it didn't matter what you believed about the mask, right? Right. If you believed that they were effective, you still wore the mask. You obviously wore the mask, but if you didn't believe that they were effective, you still wore the mask. Why? Because the key thing to propaganda is to get you to comply, to do something rather than to believe something. And in effect, it's sort of reversing the causality of how most people think they act, which is that they think that they come up with proper actions by thinking through the rational options and picking the most rational one, and then doing that action. Actually, it works the other way around. The action that you do is rationalized by your brain to justify whatever it is that you did. So once you get people to act a certain way, then the brain comes along later, which is exactly kind of what happened, right? It's okay, like I am doing all of this stuff, and that's now a part of my identity, and I'm going to continue in that direction. And that's I think what the connection between fiat money and what you would call, I guess, mass psychosis or mass belief or whatever, it's ultimately political as a way to sort of manufacture consent for particular policy and so on.
That sounds almost even counter to praxeology. Like, I mean, I know that that's how consciousness works and that's how the brain works, that we tell ourselves stories in hindsight and stuff, that is a part of the mechanics of a brain. But still, I believe praxeology to be very true, that we envision something in the future and we act upon it because we can envision a future without our action and with our action, and we choose between a hierarchy of needs what to do next. So like is propaganda like counter to that? Is it like...
No, I think it's fully consistent with praxeology in the sense that there's now another need, and it's a political one, right? So what fiat money does is it puts the political above almost everything else. So political, or I guess you could call it like a status seeking game, or making sure that you're not at the bottom of the status ladder. So it's if you get in a zero sum game, like being at the bottom really, really sucks, right? And it's a zero sum game. So if you get down to the bottom, like you have very little hope of going back up. But it's also a zero sum game. So like, by you being down there, there are other people that are able to advance and so on. And politics is very much a zero sum game. So to keep up, you need to, you have this need to play the status game because so much of the fiat economy is political. And if you don't do these things, then you're going to sink to the bottom. So instead of in a sound money economy where you can add goods or services without regard to status, like you're still going to buy a good or service if it's good, whether it's from a low class person or not. With political opinions and such, those you have to take from the top, because if you don't, then your status goes down. So there's a clear need for virtue signaling as almost like a market good, because of this presence of a money printer that has the ability to control a lot of your life. And so for a person in a fiat money system, they of course envision a future where they're virtue signaling versus not virtue signaling. And the consequences are such that because it's political, you suffer for not virtue signaling, which might include stuff like getting fired from your job, or being ostracized by your neighbors and so on. So it just brings in another whole set of considerations, which I don't think are necessarily legitimate or valuable, and is actually civilization destroying. But that's essentially what's happening.
The show is also sponsored by Orange Pill app, the Bitcoin-only social network where you can stack friends who stack sats. You can connect with your favorite Bitcoiners on the app, make local connections, and even connect with Bitcoiners around the world. You can see what's going on in your area and organize and attend local events. I've been to multiple events organized on Orange Pill app, and they brought Bitcoiners together from all over. And now, with group chat, it's easier than ever to stay in touch with all your Bitcoin friends. The best part is, it's high signal. There's no spam on Orange Pill app because everyone pays to be there. So download Orange Pill app on Apple or Android and start building your local network of Bitcoiners. Next up, the Bitcoin Way. Their mission is to onboard, educate, and remove barriers to taking self-custody of your Bitcoin. They cover everything from cold wallets to nodes, no KYC Bitcoin purchases, inheritance planning, payments, and more. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or you're an experienced Bitcoiner looking to expand your freedom footprint, or you know someone who this sounds perfect for, the Bitcoin Way has something for you. They have a skilled team, well-versed in the Bitcoin space, and their goal is to make all the complexities of Bitcoin as straightforward as possible for everyone. And the best part is you can get started with a free 30-minute call with their team. Go to thebitcoinway.com/contact for more info. Our newest sponsor is Geyser. They are the portal to the creator economy on Bitcoin. On Geyser, creators can monetize their work through their communities in a social and engaging way, and supporters can send sats to their favorite projects. Geyser has also recently integrated with Zaps and Podcasting 2.0, so every Zap sent to a Geyser address shows up on the Geyser page. We have a Geyser fund ourselves. It's the best way to support our show directly with Bitcoin. So whether you're a creator or a supporter, check out Geyser at geyser.fund today.
Is virtue signaling a direct result of money printing in the end then? Because it's money printing leads to politicization, and that in turn leads to propaganda, and that leads to virtue signaling, and it leads to this race to be, you don't have to be faster than the bear that's chasing you, you just have to be faster than like the next sucker.
Yeah, I would say it's even simpler than that. Like essentially everyone in some way works for the money printer. If you don't have the right opinions, then you're going to get cut off by the money printer, right? Like you're not going to get paid by the money printer in some way. And this might be, a couple of degrees off from, or it might be like a second or third order effect or something like that. But that political angle is an important part of every job now. If you don't have the right politics, well, let's just trace it. Like, say you work for a big company and you have an anti-vaccine thought, or and you're trying to make this decision: do I get the vaccine or not? Well, if you don't get the vaccine, maybe the company can fire you. And why is the company doing that? Because they are getting significant subsidies from the government, whether in regulation or direct funding. Certainly the airlines did that, right? They got huge bailouts because they shut down during COVID. So they got these bailouts from the government, and the government was pretty much like, hey, we have these vaccines. You're going to need to make everybody take them. And they enforced it enthusiastically. Why? Because had they not done that, then the next time they need a bailout, they're not getting it. So it all comes down from the money printer in some way, shape, or form to the actual people that have to make the decision. Now, like with vaccines, maybe that's like very overt, but it comes down to something even more subtle, like supporting Black Lives Matter, for example. Like, we are going to support this thing because that is something that is part of the ESG thing. Well, or DEI thing. And well, who's enforcing that? Who's demanding that from the company? Well, it's the Vanguards and BlackRocks of the world. And where are they getting their money? Well, they print it into existence because they're essentially banks, and they have all the money. So, fiat money is creating all of it. And if you don't do these things, it's become a part of your job description, essentially because of the money printer. And it's a direct consequence. And if you don't virtue signal, I mean, maybe you get fired. That's probably the most drastic, but more likely you're not going to get considered for promotions. You're probably not going to get invited to the projects that are, going to get you promoted or be able allow you to prove yourself to your superiors. Maybe the next company hiring you is going to hear about it from somebody, and you get marked as a troublemaker or something like that. There are all sorts of consequences that everyone has to sort of like take into account when they're making these like decisions. It's very much praxeological. It's just there's this enormous thing called fiat money that skews all of these incentives so that they're actually destructive to civilization rather than building it up.
Yeah, beautifully put. I mean, this is why I love the Bitcoin space so much, because when you hang out with Bitcoiners, you get the literal opposite. You get people's honest and thoughtful opinion. You almost always disagree with everyone, but that's what Bitcoin is. It's people that agree to disagree. It's beautiful. That's all we do. It's agreeing to disagree and getting closer to some type of truth by having thoughtful conversations. You can always learn something from a Bitcoiner because they've thought things through, and it's so refreshing when you compare it to the fiat, chasing all sorts of fictitious bullshit goals.
Yeah, indeed. And it's kind of sad because if you're told an opinion, then you obviously haven't thought too much about it. Maybe you rationalize it later, and you can kind of see it when you argue with them because they don't know what the actual rationale is, and they just sort of make crap up, right? Oh yeah, I'm doing this because of this. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And it kind of does take away a lot of agency in many ways. And I can kind of understand it because it's very comforting. Because if you just follow the rules, right? If you just comply, then you don't have to think for yourself, and you don't have to be responsible for your own decisions, which I think makes us less human. But for a lot of people, if I do everything correctly and I get screwed, then at least I can complain or something. Whereas if you make the decision and it's of your own volition and you screw up, then you have no one to blame but yourself. They like the option of being able to blame society or the powers that be or something if they get screwed over, as long as they do the right thing. It is kind of comforting, but yeah, it leads to sort of like a very monothink, like very cultish behavior almost from the people that are in fiat, and it's kind of getting scary because people are saying just outright ridiculous things as if they're like legitimate, like children should be property of the state and stuff like that, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. But I will say one thing, Knut, and I would not be doing myself a good service if I did not at least say something that I think you would disagree with, and so I'm going to say something that I've been playing around with this thought in my mind. I think fiat money is an atheist money.
Okay. That whole debate. Are we really going down that part of the rabbit hole?
Well, so I mean, hear me out, right? Like, so
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So my thought on that is basically that the general pattern with atheism is that once you remove God from the equation.
Wait a minute. I'd like your definition of atheism first, because I think yours might differ from mine.
Oh, what? I think it's somebody that doesn't believe God exists, right? Like,
yeah, it's not a belief in that there's no God, and that's a big, important distinction. It's just that you don't buy the theory that there is one, and there's a difference there.
No. That would be agnosticism. You don't know is agnosticism.
No, agnosticism is when you say that there's a 50-50 percentage. An atheist would say like there's a 99%.
No. Traditional agnosticism is you cannot know whether or not there is a God.
Okay, this is not how it's defined in Richard Dawkins' book on the subject, for instance. So
yeah, because he's an idiot. I mean, he and Sam Harris and all the new atheists are idiots. They don't study any ancient literature or like the traditional arguments for any of that. So they make up definitions however they like, and they say, and they burn down straw men all day long.
Well, he also coined the word meme.
Let's go with your definition. You don't buy the other arguments for God. Is that so? God might exist.
I don't buy the proposition of an omnipotent being of any sort. Because I think, and it has to do with agency, because I think such a being wouldn't be compelled to act ever. If you're immortal and indestructible, you would never need to act at all, especially if you're omnipotent on top of that. So I don't think an omnipotent, any type of creator would ever need to act. So therefore, I don't believe that something created what we are. Okay, but go on. I'm eager to hear your thoughts.
So let's go back. So I call it an atheist money because it sort of denies. The general pattern with atheism is that once you remove God from the equation, you deny sort of any other order, right? Any other sort of like specifically traditional rules or laws or something like that. So generally you become your own master and you decide your own rules. And that was certainly the case with communism, for example. They decided, all right, we're going to make up our own rules because there's no God. There is no other sort of like higher order that you need to submit yourself to. Or any other. It's sort of like a suspending of reality, or like denying certain other realities that you don't believe in, or whatever it is. So the way I see fiat money is denying in some way natural law, and natural law. I mean there are sort of like formulations of natural law that come from sort of like an atheistic perspective, which requires, okay, well, obviously we're having this conversation, therefore you must have a will, and therefore, you're admitting the agency of the other person and so on. I always found those sort of like sneaky and sort of coming to this from the back door, because it doesn't actually answer any of the questions about whether or not this exists and why it exists or how it exists. It's just it exists and therefore we need to obey it or something like that. But all that is to say that fiat money is a denial of the fund. It's creating its own rules about money, right? It's creating its own. It's man trying to deny the property rights of other people by essentially saying we're making up the rules and we can sort of sneakily through the back door, through inflation, through stealth taxation, steal from others because that is okay in the light of in the absence of this natural law of this other real order. Whereas sound money is based on this idea of natural law, and I really do believe that having natural law you need for any morality really, other than like a Nietzschean one, which is very sociopathic. You need a creator. You need some order, like, because how do you answer why should you believe, like, how do you go from is to ought? Why should you have respect other people's property rights? And so that's my argument for why I think fiat money is an atheist money. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So I don't know. What do you think?
I'll give you a reply. It's going to be quite long, but I'll do my best. So to shorten it down, I would say that I don't believe you need a creator to accept natural law. On the contrary, I think that even Hoppe's argumentation ethics is a good basis for morality, since you can prove that you can literally prove from deductive reasoning that forceful interactions are probably not beneficial to you, but detrimental to you. So you can build your entire morality around that framework, if you will. Furthermore,
that would be like a utilitarian morality.
Yes, very utilitarian. Yes, I would call it.
Okay,
that.
but utility is subjective, right? So how do you get it? Like, you don't have a meter here. How do you determine whether something is beneficial to you or not if you don't have an objective standard?
Well, I think that's ingrained in all of us. Like we have a survival instinct, right? So we don't want violence to happen to us, and when we realize that if we respect property rights, there's a higher likelihood that other people will respect ours. Then you can just deductively reason yourself to, I have a higher survival probability, and so does my family, if we're just nice to one another and do things consensually instead of forcefully.
Your contention then is that existence is beneficial or good or in some way positive.
Well, we don't know what the alternative is. So since nobody knows what nothingness feels like, it probably feels like whatever happened before your birth. But still, there's I think the finiteness of a human lifetime is what gives it value. It's because it's like Bitcoin. That's why Bitcoin maps on so perfectly to the scarcity of a human life. So I view the thought of an afterlife as a sort of celestial money printer, if you will, because it's the promise of something more of a scarce resource that isn't really there.
You're attributing value to a human life, period.
No, I'm saying that individuals do.
So, like, you need some justification for why human life is valuable. No?
My observation in the world is that people value their lives.
Okay, that's true. People do subjectively value their lives. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that if you just observe that you value your life and that other people's value their lives too, then you can deductively reason yourself to a moral standard. Some people may need a guideline.
Because these are all subjective valuations. How does that make, survival of everybody an objective value?
But so is belief in God. That's also a subjective thought. Well, like it's you think that, I don't, and well, that's subjective.
Well, no. But I'm contending. I'm not talking about mine. I'm talking about yours, which is you believe that human life has value. Where does that belief come from? And you're saying it can be derived. But you already admitted that it's a subjective task. I mean, they're suicidal people, for example, that think their life is worth nothing. So, like, it's universal. So how do you come up with, okay, a lot of people do value their lives, therefore time is objectively valuable?
I think since valuations are subjective, the only thing that if you were immortal and indestructible, you wouldn't ever be compelled to act because you could postpone every act indefinitely. I mean, if the planet itself...
We're talking about omnipotent beings. We're talking about your particular belief. You don't believe in God, right?
Yeah. So. I'm talking about me. If I was immortal and indestructible, I wouldn't act because a second or a minute or a day wouldn't be valuable to me. There would be no distinction between the value of a day and a 10,000 years.
Hey, what does that have to do with you now? That's a hypothetical on you're not omnipotent and you're not immortal. So why does that even enter your conversation?
That doesn't require omnipotence even. It's just immortal and indestructible. So the point is that the scarcity of
you're not
time.
Either of those. Why are you bringing that up? I'm asking about why you value time.
Can I answer, Jimmy? I'm saying that the finiteness of my life is what makes me think it's valuable. Like, just as the finiteness of Bitcoin is what makes me think that it has value to others. Like there's a connection there. But to your point about the other stuff is that I view statism and communism and all of these brutal things as just the next iteration of organized religion. They're the same thing. They're arguably even worse. I've changed my views on that since finding Bitcoin, by the way, and I now view statism as the worst form of religion yet, since it's more intrusive than the others, and it's arguably better for the flock to believe in a fictitious guy in the sky than to believe in Kim Jong-un. I understand that aspect of it, but having said that, fiat money requires belief in its scarce, in that they're scarce. They require you to appeal to some form of authority. Bitcoin has none of that, since everything in it is verifiable. You can look everything up, and you can check for yourself that people are actually doing what they're saying they're doing. So that's why I view it as financial atheism and not it's the only type of money we've ever had that doesn't require belief. You know what I mean? Like, even the gold monger could say that you have to buy this gold coin from me because gold is scarce. And there was no way of verifying that gold was actually scarce except going and trying to dig for it yourself. So Bitcoin, doesn't require any type of belief. And that's why I think it maps on so well to atheism. But the beauty of this is that we have these differences of opinion here, and both worldviews map onto Bitcoin. That's what I find fascinating, and so does a plethora of other worldviews as well. Okay, done with that.
I think respecting property rights is something that's part of natural law. So, for me, when you say like fiat is organized religion, I mean I think statism is not organized religion at all. It's just somebody.
It's a cult.
It's somebody just sort of controlling things for everybody else. There's no religious aspect to it. There's no, like afterlife or anything like that. It's just, we control you and that's it, right? Like and
so
most
why
of
does
these,
the dollar bill say "In God We Trust" and the Bitcoin does not?
I mean, like that's I don't know who put that there, but that the whole idea of fiat money was always, here we get to make the rules because we are in power. It's very Nietzschean in that regard, in that the people that that create the rules, the ones in power, get to set the rules for everybody else. And in a sense, it denies sort of like individual dignity, and that is, of course, a Christian concept. The idea that people have value, and it wasn't sort of like something that most people even heard of or thought legitimate until Christianity came into being. Like before that, it was, like you're only as valuable as you are useful to the community that you're in, and so on. So, like this idea that individuals have this importance and that their time is valuable, requires, I think, a Christian worldview. I think it requires this concept of human dignity, which I don't think you can derive from any form of atheism. You can't say, okay, the people are intrinsically valuable unless they're, I mean, like you need some reason for that. And it's a little bit taken as like an axiom for a lot of I guess atheists on the left, as far as I can tell. But it comes from a Christian worldview, and I don't know how you get that without, some imago Dei, some idea that there is value in human beings.
I don't really see why you need one. You can just observe the world around you, and I think you find empathy in just like empathy is inherent within us, whether we live in a place that even has Christianity or not. I'm sure, Eskimos have or Inuits, so they call these days, right? And not Eskimos. That's one of those taboo words. But if what I'm saying, like a tribe of human beings on a deserted on an island that has never seen any Christian ever, can also have a morality, and they can also have an inherent empathy for one another.
I'm just saying a different morality. It was a morality that didn't value specific individuals just for being people. So, for example, like ancient Sparta, they if a baby had a defect, they let them die, right? Like they killed them more or less. Like that was a very common thing. Child sacrifice, very common. The concept of human dignity, of individuals being worth something. And I think if I heard you correctly before, what you were saying is human time is valuable, and for each individual, I think in that is this assumption that people are valuable. And as I'm saying, like it's very, I don't know of an atheist formulation that can derive that, because once again, you're trying to go from is to ought.
What's the Christian? How does a Christian go from an ought to an is then, or an is to an ought?
Well, I mean, you don't need to, because you have the existence of God, and if you believe in an all-powerful being, then of course he can set morality, and that's what we believe. Each person is made in the image of God, and therefore each person is valuable. And like that's a Christian. It's a very specifically Christian thing. I want you to understand how different it was from everything that came before, because people were sacrificed and people were thrown away, people were enslaved and things like that without any recourse. And part of it was because they thought human beings are almost like property. But this idea that people are valuable, or that they have their time is valuable, has to come from some basis, and I'm not sure you have that in your formulation.
The human race survived for hundreds of thousands and even millions of years without Christianity before Christianity even existed.
Yeah, and that's fair.
I think that was all brutal. I don't think so. I think people took great care of one another and respected one another.
We don't really know, but a lot of it was very brutal.
Yeah, very brutal. But so was a lot of Christian history as well. I mean, the Crusades and
I'm just asking you what
your the Americas
were
very brutal. Yeah.
So Knut, you're bringing up other stuff. I'm asking you where your formulation that individual time is valuable comes from, because if it is valuable, if time is valuable to every individual's time is valuable, you need to have some concept of individual value. And under atheism, like, how do you get to the point where individuals are valuable?
Let me to really try to answer that question. Like, I would say that a human lifetime is a scarce resource. And like other scarce resources, there's supply and demand for it. So others have demand for your labor, for instance. So your time is valuable to other human beings because you can provide them with services during that lifetime. You can provide value to them. Like, Jimmy, you're valuable to me right now, and I hope I'm valuable to you because we're having this conversation with one another. We're exchanging my life for your life, and vice versa. Right now, we're spending our time with one another, literally spending it, because we're not getting it back. So to me, it's just like any other good or service in the world. It's valuable because it's scarce and there's a demand for it, and that's what makes a human life valuable. Literally.
All right. Yeah, and that's a very utilitarian sort of conception. And I think, like, the ancient Spartans would have agreed with you. Well, there's this baby that is horribly deformed, and it isn't going to be able to walk or anything. And their time is invaluable because they are not going to provide any good or service to us. Therefore, we're going to let it freeze out in the and like just not have it be a part of our community. And under your formulation, that would be correct. I mean, and that's fine. If you have that morality, I'm not going to say that that's illegitimate, but I'm just saying, like, the Christian response would be that baby is still valuable.
Yes. And I think that I differ from Christians sometimes there. Would you let a brain dead baby stay alive for 10 years without any functioning brain, any functioning conscious?
Yes. They're the image of God. Yes, absolutely.
All right. I think we differ there then. And I think I'm a brutal murderer for doing so. But I think the case for pulling the plug on that machine that is artificially keeping that vegetable alive, there's a moral case to be made for that. If you just
you're coming with
every life is equal,
case, right? Like somebody that is a burden to a lot of people and so on. But I mean, but there's like somebody that's homeless, that's like mentally ill and not able to do it, hold down any job or whatever. Like the lines get a lot grayer, Knut. And if you don't have this conception that individuals are valuable for their own sake, then you very quickly get into very dark places, like morally speaking. You know what I mean?
Well, I do, but I think your argument gets you into the Superman dilemma that you took up before again, because like now you were saying that each and every life on earth should be respected equally. Therefore, it becomes your calling to go and save everyone. Then it's like that. Is that even a worldview that is productive for that cause? I don't know. Like, why aren't you a doctor and running around saving
life
people?
Was a waste. I mean, she went into Calcutta and took on like babies that like nobody wanted and helped raise them and stuff like that.
Only if they said that, only if they accepted God. If they didn't accept the rules that she set for them, she was fucking brutal to them. She was not a good human being, in my opinion, at all. She took money from the horrible dictators
that no one wanted. Like, these were people that no one wanted.
Yeah, but she only helped them if they accepted God. So if they adopted what she thought was right, then she helped.
I mean, the thing is, Knut, you're then in a worse position because you wouldn't help them at all.
No, I would absolutely help them if I could, and if I thought that was the best.
So aren't
use
you
of
in the
my
same
time.
Superman dilemma? I mean, like you're making it sound like it's a Christian problem, but you just said you would help people.
I think you and I have found the same solution to that Superman dilemma. Not that I don't think neither you nor I think that we're Superman, But I think we found spending our time explaining to Bitcoin to people is the best thing we can do for the biggest amount of people. Like that's the best way we can help. We can leave this planet a little better than we came into it. That's my goal with this anyway. To make the world a better place. It sounds pretentious, but I think you have that goal as well.
What does better even mean for you, though? Like, because in a sense, like, is it the optimization of human life or utility that other people find? Or I mean, because I have trouble understanding what the end goal is when, it's hard for me to see what you see as good and what you see as bad.
Well, I see violence as bad and communication as good. Like it's back to the Hoppe argumentation for argumentation again. Like the freer the market, the sounder the money, the fewer resources get misallocated. I know we agree on that. And by misallocation, we mean that they're not put in use for individuals to reach their individual ends and goals. A select few get to choose all that, and in doing so, they also ruin things for themselves, but they don't know it because they don't know the power of the free market and so on and so forth. It's easy to be good without having to have like I don't see why a belief in a God would necessarily change that dilemma. I don't see why.
Well, I mean, it might not in our God. I know if you believe in my God, that the dilemma is solved very easily. But the main thing is that it's under what, and to go back to sort of the original argument with fiat money, what you have is people making the rules instead of following the rules that I think are set by natural law. And the basis of natural law, I think, requires some sort of moral order. And a moral order under an atheist view is very difficult to come up. Just like this is the is to ought thing.
Knut, I want to take this one. Okay. I want to because I think I'm seeing here the real clash that Jimmy, I think, not to put words in your mouth, but I think you are making an assertion, something about that without a belief in the Christian God, you cannot have the exact same level of morality. My assertion is that meaning is still possible, and finding meaning through whichever means of morality, justification, learning it through culture, learning it through self. I would say that many people in the Bitcoin community who are not Christians, who have found Bitcoin and improved themselves, have learned to have some kind of meaning, whether it's through Bitcoin or Bitcoin adjacent things. And so I would put you both in the camp of meaning having people. And it's the absence of meaning that fiat comes from, in my view, because that's the Nietzschean thing, right? God is dead and we have killed him. It's the absence of meaning, not specifically the absence of the Christian God, right?
Well, it's not just the absence of meaning, but it's the absence of traditional morality. So a lot of the morality that we take for granted almost comes from a very Christian worldview. I think I've made that case with like sort of babies and that, like, in almost every other culture before Christianity, this was the norm to like treat people almost like property in some ways, or it based on utilitarian calculations or something like that. I find that abhorrent. I think most people do, to like just sort of callously set aside somebody because they're no longer useful to society. That would be horrible. I think most people agree with that.
Absolutely.
I'm asserting that natural law, and it's not about like alignment with Christianity or whatever. That natural law, at the very least, requires some sort of moral order. Now, as a Christian, I would say that that's the law written on our hearts by God. But for an atheist, you have to come up with why that's true. Like why like committing violence against somebody else is bad. And Knut, I think to your credit, the formulations you come up with are because it's more useful. But I would submit to you that utilitarian arguments almost always lead to a very bad philosophical place, because you get into the trolley dilemma and stuff like that, where you're, harvesting a fat man's organs so you can go and save 5 people or something.
Okay, no. Where I'm coming from, Jimmy, is that the very notion of a God and these moral guidelines that you talk about, I believe that they came from a guy trying to do just that, trying to find a way to rationalize that. And he wrote this story down, and that's how he did that. So I think man preceded God. And that's where we differ, because I think this is a story we tell ourselves.
But by saying that, you're saying morals existed before the guy, right? So where did the morals come from?
Yeah. Well, I think we evolved the morals because our group survivability benefited from us having that kind of moral standard. And that includes saving the baby that's deformed. That level of empathy enables trust in the rest of the group. You know that you're not going to be left out. So you know that you're not going to get ostracized. And that's good for the group survival. It's not evolutionary theory is not just people killing one another. It's collaboration as well.
I think I just showed with like the example of Sparta, for example, that was exactly the opposite of what required them to survive.
That's one example. You can also use counter examples. Christian. You can't say that throughout the entire life of Christianity that everyone had the prosperity necessary to not have to make a decision like that, right? I think scarcity is the real problem there. These so-called utilitarian problems come in when there is such a degree of scarcity that those decisions actually have to be made. And I would assert that a group of people that doesn't actually make these decisions correctly will not survive. If the tribe decides not to actually make some pragmatic decisions about who gets to eat, the whole tribe might not survive the winter. And that's terrible. And I don't think that's unique to Christianity.
No, but your argument is that it is somehow more evolutionary fit for survival, right?
A more important point to me than the notion of God itself, because I really don't care what people about personal belief. What bothers me is organized religion. And this notion that, to me, the Pope is just another version of a central bank. It's a guy that says that he is in contact with God and that he sets rules for people. And whatever he says, people get influenced by that and they do whatever. And now he's going around waving rainbow flags and stuff. So I think the appeal to authority is the problem.
That's believe it or not, that's actually a fairly modern conception. The infallibility of the Pope was a doctrine that was adopted around in the 19th century. So it's like most of the history of Christianity does not have this particularly like omnipotent authoritarian Pope. So that Lord Acton's quote, "Power corrupts absolutely. Absolute power, or power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely." He was a Catholic talking about the Pope about that exact issue. So it's a fairly recent phenomenon, and I believe it's sort of a result of honestly Marxist influence. But yeah, that Catholic social teaching. But yeah,
yes, we do, and I think that to me the problem becomes then like. Because of this, I respect you as a Christian way more than I respect your average Pope fan, because there are so many different definitions of the word Christianity. As we've explored today, there are even different definitions different definitions of the word atheist as well. And this is so nuanced, and I think it has to do with semantics a lot. But the point I wouldn't want you to think of me as someone that hates the notion of God, because that's not representative of what I think at all. I hate appeals to authority. That's like, I think people should think for themselves and be able to do so to as large an extent as possible, because I'm freedom maximalist, for lack of a better word.
But Knut, I'm going to say that you appeal to authority too, but you appeal to some sort of evolutionary side trick on the moral laws, saying they evolved, and I don't know exactly how they evolved or why, but they exist because of this evolutionary group dynamic or whatever it is. I mean that's a form of authority. It's asserting something that you can't prove exists, that like this moral law came into being.
No, but neither can you, Jimmy. Mechanism. Neither can you. You can't prove it either.
Can. But that's the point, right? Is that if you're going to say I reject all authority ever, then you would have to reject your own argument.
Yeah, I guess. I want to minimize appeals to authority, just as I want to minimize the size of government or the size of the church or whatever. Like but another point that is important to make is that a belief in evolutionary theory has nothing to do with atheism. A lot of atheists buy the evolutionary theory, but that's not what the word atheist means. The atheism just means the rejection of theistic ideas.
Yeah, and I kind of get that. I'm just responding to what you asserted before, that the moral law that you follow, more or less, it comes from some group dynamic that you can't identify or figure out how it came into being. You just assert that it has, and in a sense, that's a form of authority.
And you assert that it came from God. So we have. I'm saying I don't know, and I'm fine with not knowing. I cannot prove that it happened this way or that way, or what kind of evolution happened.
Then why do you follow it if you don't know where it comes from? That's the part that's confusing to me.
Neither do you. That's the thing. You have a belief,
exactly,
but you can't prove
because I believe in God, but for you, you're following a moral law where you don't know where it came from. You don't know why it exists.
How is it so hard for you to accept that I believe in a set of principles without believing in a God? For me, what's the difference there?
Well, then why do you believe in the principles? I guess.
Why to counter it? Why do you believe in God then? Like, why?
Because I've experienced God, that I mean, but I'm asking more about you. Like you have these rules that you follow,
but this is me interviewing you
following
not
them.
The other way.
That's the part that's confusing to me. And in a sense, that's where it sounds like a little NPC-ish. Honestly, it's like, okay, there are these rules. I'm following them. I don't really know why. Like that's where it's a little confusing.
I'm saying that neither do you, Jimmy. And I'm just fine with not knowing why I don't follow them. Like I don't need to jump to a conclusion.
Follow them because you do follow certain moral rules, right?
I do, absolutely. I have high moral standards for myself and for my family.
But you're saying it came out of some evolutionary thing, and you don't.
No, I just think that these principles of natural law and first principles thinking will do good to a lot of people, as opposed to doing bad. It will make people's lives more comfortable and easier, and filled with more meaning and better in general. So to me, it's a no-brainer to follow these principles. And
you're saying more better, but you like this gets back to what's good, what's bad. Like it's all kind of like.
But you have the same problem. That's my point. Like saying that there's a God.
I don't think I do. I think I know exactly what good is. It's whatever's alignment with God. Like. They're very, very much like easier ways to evaluate things for me, whereas for you, they're all kind of relative and subjective. So it's very hard for me to understand what you're saying.
What if you're wrong then, Jimmy, and one of these principles that you follow is completely wrong? Like, for instance, that you should turn the other cheek, or that you should treat everyone equally, or treat everyone as they would have treated you. People want to be treated differently. So treating someone like you would have treated yourself is not necessarily a good moral principle to live by, in my opinion. And also turning the other cheek is not always the correct option in a moral sense to me.
Yeah, and in fact, that was very radical from a moral perspective. Nobody else said turn the other cheek. It was smite your enemies, and that was the moral. And from your perspective, I suppose that from sort of like an evolutionary perspective, turning the other cheek would make zero sense. Yet that is very much something that is a part of the morality that we have today. And I suspect that you follow a lot of it without even recognizing it, right? Like you try to, you try to treat other people well, even if they might treat you very badly or have treated you badly. So
yeah,
I mean, in a sense, it's a part of our sort of like societal milieu, right? Like the moral waters that we swim in are more or less Christian in many ways. I'm just asking, I guess, as a Christian, if you're not Christian and you're swimming in Christian moral waters, well, how do you define your?
Well, you call them Christian moral waters, but I think they I think they preceded Christianity, and that Christianity
really don't think they did. That's historically inaccurate. I really don't think they did.
Let me give you some receipts. I'm in with some backup. This golden rule, the reciprocity maxim, so to say. There is evidence for that in ancient Egypt, ancient India.
Well, there's Confucius said it before him too, but I mean that's a particular rule. But I'm talking about the dignity of human beings, like the fact that every human being has value, or that that's a completely new concept as of Christianity. Because every other culture, it was fine to go attack your enemies. It was fine to go kill them. It was fine to go, sacrifice a baby or do whatever. Like it was very new, and it was radical for that reason. And I would submit to you that is something that is very much a part of the moral waters that we're swimming in. And it was an innovation in many ways, but and maybe you can argue that it was like it evolved at that point or something like that. But I don't see any evidence that it was something that was taken for granted beforehand.
Yes,
we need to end the debate here, I think, and move on with the pod, because I mean, as much as
it's fun, but I get it.
Yeah,
it's a little
as much as I love this, Jimmy. I think for the quality for our listeners, we need to move on there. And I'd like to do a thing with you that I do with a lot of Christian Bitcoiners I meet. So I'm going to tell you 7 statements, and you tell me whether you agree or don't agree to them. Okay? Okay. One should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason.
I mean, depends on what you mean by reason. Like with logical consistency or something like that. Is that what you mean, or what do you mean by reason?
I'm not putting any value into this, because it's just a thought experiment here. So one should strive to. Do you agree, or do you disagree, or do you agree to some extent? Think of it as one of those, magazine. Stupid.
Well, the definition kind of matters, because when a lot of this is just from my experience, when a lot of people say, or when a lot of atheists say by reason, it's you're subscribing to the logic that I've already made, and if you don't agree, then you're not it's the particular reasoning that you have versus I think it's internally, if you're talking about internal consistency, absolutely. But if it's consistency with what, you happen to believe or something or to what society believes or something like that, then that definition matters here. And that's why I'm a little hesitant on answering this.
Yes, good answer. That's what I would have answered as well, I think, because I think in accordance with reason, reason according to whom, but reason is a very dangerous word there. Okay, so number 2, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions.
Yes, but once again, I think you need a good definition of justice to make that work. Because justice is a very loaded moral term, and it's what is right or wrong and stuff like that. And if you take natural law or justice according to natural law, I would agree. If it's justice according to the laws of the United States of America, I wouldn't.
Okay. 3. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone.
Disagree.
Okay. So who else's will is it? Like who else gets to decide over your body? This is basically property rights, isn't it?
Well, so one's say that exactly again.
In a Rothbardian sense, property rights, it's just an extension of that, the notion that you own your own body. So
from a practical perspective, I agree. From a spiritual perspective, I don't. Yeah,
because it's God's body.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's your body is a temple of God. Yeah.
4. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own.
To willfully, what was the word again? To willfully what?
I'll do it again. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own.
Yeah, this again has that word unjust in there, and that's the word I was tripping over. If it's in alignment with natural law, if that's the justice that you're talking about, yeah, absolutely. If it's some state law, or like if it's another definition of justice, then no. Like if it's like, based on the laws of the United States or something like that, then
no, I think I haven't done my research here, but I think this is about natural law to a large extent. I think that's what it means by justice.
Yeah, and this because there are like many philosophies of justice. It's whatever the state says, which is a very sort of like statist, positivist kind of assertion that's how they define justice. So you have to be kind of careful there. But yeah, under natural law, I think that would make sense.
So you agree with the statement, but maybe not with the wording, because you find the word unjustly to be too...
It's always tricky with these like philosophical things, because it matters a whole lot what each word means. And from a particular perspective, it's like, okay, that like I would definitely agree in some cases. In others, it like doesn't make any sense to me, because it's somebody alters the definition, so you agree with it. You just kind of have to be careful there.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. Beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care to never distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs.
The second part I agree with. I don't think that covers all belief, so I don't think I agree with the first part.
Okay. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused.
I believe that as a Christian, yeah. Like I think it would be harder for other people to justify that, but yeah, sure.
Okay, and the last thing here is every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word.
Yeah, there are too many words that are too ambiguous there for me to comment.
Yeah, but now okay, this is just a silly experiment, because I'd like for you to guess what this was. What was these?
I don't know what was it. Maybe like some humanist tract or something like that. I'm guessing something from the Enlightenment. I don't know.
The 7 Tenets of Satanism by Anton LaVey.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's yeah.
I don't know. I don't even. I don't even know if I'm trying to make a point here or anything. If there is a point, it's that I think I agree with you. Words are important, because with too fluffy words, you could sort of agree with everything if that's the case. If the words are fluffy enough, and I say you could probably map Bitcoin onto these 7 tenets pretty easily and say that they're sort of in line with that. If you just, interpret the words in a way that suits that purpose.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, words are in many ways in those kinds of things often very meaningless. I think I was watching like a Scalia congressional thing, or he was like talking to some law students a long time ago, and he was saying, "Have you read the Bill of Rights for like some of these communist countries?" And he was like, "You read them; they're better than our Bill of Rights." Right? Like it guarantees freedom of speech and freedom of this and freedom of that. It's better, like for a lot of these like authoritarian communist countries. And he's like, so what's the difference? Why is it that we have a better system than they do? Why do they have so much oppression? Because the words mean something. The more the words actually mean something, the more you're likely to be aligned with a prosperous society. So, in a sense, like I don't put much stock in something like the 7 tenets of Satanism, because we know what they do, right? Like their actions in many ways belie whatever it is that they say they do. In fact, like you can go look at like a lot of the tenets of like some very violent organizations and stuff. I'm sure you could go to like some criminal mafia organization. But that's sort of like an expression of fiat to me, right? Because in a fiat world, the words don't mean anything. It's just sort of like reality by decree, and that's where I think you get into a lot of trouble. And this is why I say that fiat is an atheist money, because it's not in alignment with reality, whereas Bitcoin is in alignment with reality, with natural law. And that's what makes it so effective. And that's what makes it so good for commerce and for storing value and all of these things, because it's in alignment with reality instead of suspending reality. What fiat lets you do, as I point out in this book, is that it lets you suspend reality for a long time. And under zero interest rates, yeah, you can all kinds of things can survive. It's only when reality reasserts itself that we find out that all of this was for naught, and we're kind of seeing that now, even as interest rates rise, because reality is kind of rushing back in. Like all these companies that were on zero interest rates, like they're not going to survive. And there was a lot of subsidization of a lot of foolish stuff from this suspension of reality, or wishing that reality could be different. And that's where I think Bitcoin is very strong, is that it's in alignment with reality. There's no suspension of reality. And we can go back to natural law market dynamics, which I think ultimately build up civilization in a really awesome way that we've been missing for the last 50 years.
Amen to that. And Luke, I think this is the part where I say, what do you think about Bitcoin as atheist money or Christian money and fiat atheist money? Comment in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and brush your teeth.
Absolutely perfect. And the both of you we're ending this conversation on a good note, right? Everyone's still friends, right?
Of course.
Absolutely. I absolutely love this, Jimmy.
I don't get offended very easily, just so you know. So,
and we're very much alike like that, I think. I love these debates.
A lot of Bitcoiners are. I don't think you can survive in the public realm without like some serious criticism coming your way. So
no, you need a panzer skin. Sort of.
Is that what you call it? We call it like elephant hide or something like that.
Yeah. I was grasping for words there. But I hope to see you in real life soon, Jimmy, so that we can.
Are you going to be at Pacific or Amsterdam?
Amsterdam. I'll be in Amsterdam, so I'll see you there.
Okay, so I'll see you there. I'm going to Lugano as well, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to Lugano as well. So see you in Amsterdam and Lugano, and there might be some stuff for us there to do. I'm not going to say more than that, but
okay. Well, I'll get you a book when I'm in Amsterdam for sure. So yeah,
fantastic, and I'll bring a praxeology book for you.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I wrote a book of praxeology. Maybe you don't know, but I wrote a little short introductory book on praxeology.
I feel like you had one last year at Baltic Honey Badger, and I think I might have one. Actually, give me a sec. I might have it. Let me just see.
I think that's the Everything Divided book. If it was from last year, because I wrote this last winter.
It's this one. Yeah, there you go. I had this one from the Baltic Honey Badger last year, and
nice.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it was signed. Yeah. There you go. All right, but yeah, praxeology is the new one, huh?
Yeah, and it's very short. And it's me trying to condense Mises into the 130 pages. And
okay,
I know that might make you giggle, but well, I did my best.
Maybe I can go read it and have you on my podcast or something.
I'd love to come on and talk about it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, send me a PDF or something, and I'll try to read it. I don't know if I can do it before I get to Amsterdam, so maybe I should just wait. But I read everything on the Kindle anyway. So but yeah, let's figure something out. Yeah.
No audiobooks.
I need to be like because I take a lot of notes and stuff like that. I need to be. I can't do it on audio. The reason I read books is to get ideas, and I need to be like interacting with it. So yeah, I don't really do audio. Yeah.
Jimmy, please show your stuff one last time.
Yes. Where can we find you?
At Jimmy Song on Twitter. I have a newsletter, jimmysong.substack.com, Bitcoin Tech Talk. See, I have a link tree, I think, in my Twitter bio or X bio, I guess now. So go check that out. You can go find the book on fiatruinseverything.com, and you can order from Amazon. You can order from Bitcoin Magazine, or you can get a signed copy from me if you're in North America. So yeah, please order. You can pay in Bitcoin, you can pay in dollars, whatever. So it's all available. All right.
Excellent. Jimmy, thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate you a lot. You're an absolute OG in the space, and it's a privilege to have you on. I send my regards to your beautiful family, and I wish you all the best in the future.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing you in Amsterdam. Let's have some fun there too.
Yep. Let's go. LFG.
This has been the Freedom Footprint Show. Thanks for listening.
All right. You're going to need some editing on that one, huh?
So, what did you think of that? It's quite the debate between Jimmy and Knut. We may have to continue that one in the future. What was your favorite moment? Let us know. You can send us a boostergram on Fountain, leave us a comment on YouTube, or get in touch on Nostr or Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the episode and subscribe to the channel. Our show's sponsors are Amber App, Wasabi Wallet, Orange Pill App, The Bitcoin Way, and Geyser. Check them out in the description. That's all for now. See you next time, and thanks for listening.